This is going to be a quick intro to neuroscience video. If you don't know what neuroscience is, it's the study of the nervous system, which includes the brain. And with neuroscience, you can get a lot deeper than you can with psychology, because psychology, you're kind of making assumptions on what's happening within the brain and stuff like that. But with neuroscience, you're not making any assumptions. You're just going based off of the cells in the brain. All right, let's get started. So first we're going to go over the brain, as in what is the brain. We're going to go over what a neuron is, specialization in the brain, what circuits are, how neurons communicate, and what excitation and inhibition are. The brain is an organ in every animal that receives information about the environment, processes that information, and causes most behavior based on the information processed. So you've got your senses, then parts of your brain that process the information and make decisions based on it, and then the signals that your brain sends out to cause behavior, like to cause movement. And that is all based on the information that it has received and processed. The main type of cell in the brain is the neuron, and this is a neuron right here. I know this picture is a little weird looking, but this is what a neuron looks like generally. We'll go over that more in the next slide. All processing of information is done by neurons. All intentional movement is initiated by neurons. So these neurons go down your spinal cord, and there are also more neurons in your spinal cord, and they send signals to your muscles to contract or relax or whatever. This is a bit of a closer look at what a single neuron looks like. It has the cell body, which is right here. This thing has an axon, which is this thing that's also covered in this stuff that's called myelin sheath, which I won't go over. And it has these dendrites, and it has synapses, which are on the end of axons. The cell body contains a lot of supportive organelle, and including the nucleus. So there are a lot of important processes that change the properties of the cell that happen in the cell body. The axon is a wire-like extension that carries signals down the axon and across relatively long distances to other neurons or to muscles. Dendrites receive signals from other neurons, so you'll have axons that connect to dendrites on other neurons, and then there will be other neurons who have axons that connect to this neuron's dendrites. Synapses are where the axon meets the dendrite. So the axon of this neuron will meet the dendrite of another neuron, or even the cell body, but usually dendrite. And the part where they meet is called the synapse. Neural circuits are a network of connected neurons that usually have similar functions. They allow communication between different areas of the brain, and they each have their own purpose. For example, fear circuits are circuits that communicate fear to areas of the brain. If there's an area of the brain right here that usually communicates fear, it would have fear circuits that go around the brain and communicate fear. That might not make much sense if you don't know too much about the brain, but that is how it works. So every thought you have is a circuit activating, or a group of neurons activating. And every behavior of yours is initiated and carried out by neural circuits that are either in the brain or in the spinal cord, or coming from the brain down through the spinal cord. You know what I mean? As I kind of mentioned in the last slide, every part of the brain is specialized for a different purpose. Now, you don't need to remember these different lobes. I just wanted to show that each part of the brain has a different purpose, and it does something different. And it's pretty much the same in every single person. So the parietal lobe, which it's hard to see, but it's this top part. The section is pretty much right here. Anyway, the parietal lobe on everybody is related to touch perception and movement control. The occipital lobe, which is this rear part of the brain, not including this thing, deals with visual perception and shape perception. And the frontal lobe, which is this section of the brain, deals with planning and intellect. And the temporal lobe, which is right here, deals with long-term memory and hearing. Now, these all have many more functions, but these are some of the main ones. And what I wanted to show you on this slide is just that you can map out the brain and know where certain areas are that carry out certain functions. So, for example, in the parietal lobe, the section that deals with touch perception has a bunch of different sections in it, and every single one receives information from a different body part. So, one part of it receives information from the feet, another part from the legs, etc. And it's in pretty much the same position in every single person. So the same section in every single person deals with the tongue or something. So this is important because some studies show development of a specific part of the brain as a result of some method. And if we know the function of that part of the brain, we can use that method to improve that part of the brain, to develop it, and therefore get more powerful function from that specific part of the brain. Now, the neuron communication process is extremely complicated, so hopefully this won't confuse you. But I'm not going to go super deep into it. I mean, if you go deep enough into it, there's a whole process with these things where they have like 50 different proteins on each of them. Whatever. Don't even think about that. So neurons communicate at the synapse, which I mentioned before. It's the end of the axon where it meets the dendrite or the cell body of another neuron. So this would be the axon, and you would call this the presynaptic neuron because it's the one sending signals. And this would be the dendrite or the cell body, and you would call it the postsynaptic neuron because it's receiving the signals. The main form of communication at these synapses is neurotransmitters. They're released from the presynaptic neuron's axon, and they connect to receptors on the postsynaptic neuron's dendrites. So they connect to these things, which they react to the neurotransmitters and change the property of the postsynaptic neuron. So neurotransmitters can make a neuron fire, they can prevent a neuron from firing, or they can do a whole lot of other things. There are many different neurotransmitters with many different functions. Dopamine, for example, makes some neurons more likely to fire and others less likely. So even though I worded it like this, nothing will ever simply make a neuron fire or stop a neuron from firing. I won't get into the reasons why because that would really overcomplicate this. But neurons can only be made more likely or less likely to fire. Making a neuron more likely to fire is called excitation, or exciting that neuron. And making a neuron less likely to fire is called inhibition, or inhibiting that neuron. A neuron fires when the sum, as in addition or subtraction, of exciting and inhibiting signals from all sources meets a certain threshold. So if a neuron excites another neuron, it makes it more likely to fire. And if a neuron inhibits another neuron, it makes it less likely to fire. And if you have enough exciting signals that are hitting a neuron and you don't have many inhibiting signals, that neuron will fire. Alright, so this wraps it up for the Intro to Neuroscience video. I hope this wasn't too confusing.